We're just going to do a little bit on this story and we will come back to it because we're going to try and get to the bottom of exactly what happened and who these victims were. But while we were away, there was a story by our colleague Patrick O'Connell and Oisin McGovern that the man who was waterboarded by the ex-Sinn Féin councillor Jonathan Dowdall and his father, we remember hearing the details of this in the court case that followed it, but also during the Regency trial. This guy, who was then going by the name of Alex Hurley, had come to buy a motorbike off Jonathan Dowdall. And Dowdall obviously smelt a bit of a rat, did a little bit of a investigation into his background, he said, and reckoned this guy, Hurley, was trying to diddle him out of the motorbike, steal it off him or whatever. So he invited him to his house for dinner. Hurley accepted the invite, went and was basically taken into a garage in that house and terrorised, told that he was going to have his fingers chopped off, told by Dowdall that he was a senior member of the IRA and that he was going to kill him and his parents. And he was waterboarded, actually. It was all videoed by a close associate of Dowdall's. And actually, the video was what led to the whole scenario being discovered because the Gardaí searched Dowdall's house during the Regency Hotel investigation and found the clip.
They found the clip on a USB port. So
yeah. Now, Hurley was very much, depicted and seen as the victim in that. And he was somewhat, whether or not you are trying to trick somebody out of something, it isn't an excuse for that kind of level of threat and criminality. But he's back in the news and he's now going by the name of Niall Daly.
Yeah, so he changed his name. He changed his name by default, probably because of the high level of publicity around the Jonathan Dowdall case. Now, when the original case came to court, Jonathan Dowdall did make a lot of legal maneuvers about, trying to describe his motivation, saying it wasn't just random and all of that, but he never produced any particular evidence to show that he was nearly a victim of a fraud from Alex Hurley during that occasion.
No.
Now, he obviously had his suspicions or whatever, but he didn't show the court anything that was accepted by the court that could be described as a motivation to commit this crime. But even if he had, you can't justify that level of inflicting that level of violence on anybody. Certainly not for something to do with a motorbike being sold. However, it has been shown that Alex Hurley now is being convicted of a large number of offences to do with bouncing cheques, obtaining fraudulent loans, and he's ultimately facing jail time now.
He's pleaded guilty to money laundering and forgery charges at Castlebar Circuit Court.
Yes. Now, these are money laundering is the charge, but you're not talking about organised gangland activity. Really, what this is it's fraud, basically, ripping people off.
Now, Daly, under his new identity, has spoken to Patrick O'Connell, a journalist who works with us, and he has given his sort of side of events, really, hasn't he? He's pending sentence. He says he wants to apologise to all parties involved, in particular to my father, for his name being dragged into it. So his father ultimately does take out a loan, I think, and put it into his account, presumably to sort out some mess that he's got himself into. Daly blames the waterboarding and the ordeal at the hands of Jonathan Dowdall in 2015 as the reason why he sort of has gone down this road. He says his life was derailed by the stress and the cyber abuse that he got. Anyway, he says that over a period of time, these things, and he goes into talking in general, can force people to make unacceptable choices, and I now have to take full responsibility for what I did. I will now endeavour to pay back all the money and take steps to prevent myself from ever doing anything like this again. But it's interesting because we get a little bit of an insight into who he is and, what's going on in his life.
Yeah, and I think that his criminal offences are described as foolish and unsophisticated offending, and they do fall into that category. investigating Garda Ronan McIntyre told the court how he tried to open a financial account using a fraudulent mobile bill, and if he had opened it, the bank would have been at a loss at 3,500.
This is all in Mayo, yeah.
This is all in Mayo, where he seems to have moved after the
and he's only 28 now, and he was only 18 at the time of the waterboarding incident.
18 or 19, I think. Yeah, so really young anyway. So ultimately, he opens up this Ulster Bank account, is identified by the police, where he attempted to cash 12 cheques that bounced due to insufficient funds, and they were later lodged, and he opened an overdraft, and there were 6 parties injured by these activities, and 2 complaints were lodged. So basically, the court also heard that there were 29 cheques were written and bounced due to insufficient funds in a PTSB account registered to Daly. So, bouncing cheques definitely qualifies as unsophisticated criminality, doesn't it?
Because nowadays,
nowadays it's you're almost doomed to being caught, aren't you?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's not something that you can sort of get away with in the long term.
Now, at the same time, because it was guilty plea, we have just really the bare bones of what has happened here. So it will be interesting to try and dig down into exactly what occurred. The judge, Owen Garavan, says he doesn't accept that Daly is at low risk of reoffending, citing the past incidences where he has stolen from his father, his neighbour and former employees, none of which we actually know anything about, because that seems to be in reports that are given to the court. And Judge Garavan says this man is absolutely fundamentally dishonest, and his history shows that he doesn't really care who he cons. Now, he indicated that he was going to give him a 2-year custodial sentence and 2 1-year sentences to run concurrently, but he has adjourned that sentencing until next year and has ordered, restitution, that he pays back this money and he undertakes some counselling before he decides on that final sentence. But the court was told that he was born in Romania.
Yes.
And he was 3 years old when he was sort of adopted in Ireland by his parents. His father is Dermot Hurley, and he seems to have, in the middle of this mess, tried to help him restitute those who have been either conned or himself, to try and get him out of trouble. So he's obviously still, the family are still sort of in the picture there, certainly up until this point. But, Dowdall's investigations into him.
Yeah, I mean, look, Dowdall obviously had these, and interestingly, he did use some of this money to buy 3 motorbikes. So the motorbike link is in there. Now, the defence barrister described Alex Hurley, or Niall Daly as he's known now, as a very flawed human being who'd engage in unacceptable behaviour. And he heard that he was now employed as an accounting technician for a UK-based company, and he displayed traits of narcissistic personality disorder. So that comes from his own defence. And he'd been referred by his GP for counselling and was deemed to be at low risk of reoffending by the probation service.
Yeah, but the judge doesn't accept that.
No, the judge doesn't accept it. And he actually brings up and says, Judge Garavan says, I believe his narcissistic nature is such that he will do this again.
Right.
So narcissistic personality disorder is actually, you hear a lot about narcissism now, but personality disorder would be, not just somebody who having narcissistic traits, but having a sort of clinical diagnosis where they would have, I suppose, it'll be characterized by, maybe not taking other people into consideration, let's put it that way. So it's...
Fairly Struck Daly likes the media. He doesn't run from it at all. He's done a number of interviews over the years.
Yeah, now he has at times, even with us, asked not to be named, but some people do interviews with the media and some people don't. But it would be, of course, a possible trait of narcissism to, at least to seek attention in the public eye, like, for sure. You know what I mean? That wouldn't be uncommon, I suppose.
Well, one way or another, let's try and get to the bottom of what actually went on down in Mayo, how long those frauds went on for, and exactly what happened, because sometimes frauds can be extremely complex, and people involved sometimes can put in a huge amount of energy for a little value of
Yeah,
the
and of
thing.
course you've done the podcast, The Gambler, that people
Yeah.
would have listened to, which is sort of not dissimilar from this type of offending, is it? In terms
Well,
of
yeah, that's why I was just interested in delving down into exactly what he did.
so, and I mean, frauds of
The
this.
gambler, Pat Sheedy, who had ended up in prison, who was a Limerick man who had cited throughout his career of frauds a gambling disorder, which sort of had, spurred him to
Commit these acts.
commit these acts. But actually, when you looked at what had gone on for the little amount of money, and you were looking for the evidence then of the spend into gambling, it was difficult to decipher whether the addiction was the fraud or the gamble.
Yeah, and so the fact, obviously, somebody, his defence had brought up the narcissistic personality disorder, but one of the traits of that would be what's called interpersonally exploitative. So people that would always seek to exploit the people that they deal with.
You love an L personality.
I do. But those types of frauds, they can be very personal frauds.
Oh, they
can't
can, yeah.
Because there's not huge amounts of money being.
It's not huge amounts of money, but I think what they do for the victims, and which is unrecognised probably by the courts, the only thing really that tends to be recognised in it all is the amount of money that's been stolen or defrauded or tricked out of them. But they tend to feel this huge sense of disappointment in themselves that they have been tricked. And it can be something that is really, really deep and can cause some huge psychological pain.
Yes,
That
exactly.
they have trusted, or that they have fallen for this fraud, and it makes them feel vulnerable and stupid. And a lot of people actually don't come forward.
Yeah, exactly. And, because of its personal nature.
Yeah.
Another trait of the narcissist would be a lack of empathy, where, it's one thing to, say if you're a cocaine dealer, it's an impersonal action really, isn't it? If you're importing cocaine, but, fraud, especially of those sort of small types, you have to kind of get personal to know the person to defraud them and all of that.
Yes,
and you have to have a kind of,
and a lot of effort.
and also a bit of a lack of consideration on a personal level, where most people, if they know somebody, they're actually less likely to treat them badly for the most part. So an interesting case.
Yeah, okay, we'll come back to it.
Okay, thanks, Nicola.
You're
No,
not,
thanks.
No, I'm not saying that anymore. I've given up.
Okay.
I'm Nicola Tallant, and you're watching Crime World, a podcast about criminals, drugs and the underworld in Ireland and across the globe. Make sure you subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications so you can be the first to watch all our latest episodes. You can also listen wherever you get your podcasts.